Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Firstly, I want to commend the member for O'Connor, not just for his words and his tireless advocacy for his community, but also his work as the Deputy Chair of the Agriculture Committee. And I'm lucky enough to serve with the member for O'Connor on that committee, making sure that we're a voice for agriculture. And last year, we completed an inquiry into food security. And what is clear, unfortunately, while it was a bipartisan committee report, clearly the government didn't take the time to look at that report, because what it showed was that Australian farmers are struggling and they're under pressure. The member for O'Connor, myself, anyone in a farming industry knows that. They are under significant pressure at the moment, but clearly this government didn't take the time to read that report and understand the pressure they're on, because we need to understand that if we can't feed ourselves as a nation, well, what are we as a nation? If we can't feed ourselves, what are we? And let's not muck around and beat around the bush. Australian farmers are doing it as hard as they have ever done it. The pressures on them coming left, right and centre are harder than ever. And the Prime Minister can stand up and do a little bit of showpiece about the ACCC and about Coles and Woolworths and the duopoly, and there's no doubt that's putting pressure on farmers across the country. But let's be serious and realistic. The constraints on inputs and pressures on them is crucifying them as well. I'm proud to represent the community of Casey, which has a strong history in agriculture. My family made its way in this country when they came, Deputy Speaker, in 1952 from Italy and started a farm in Sylvan in our community. Now, I know the member for O'Connor was a farmer, I'm not sure. Member for Riverina, great journalist, not sure. Came from a farm. I'm happy to admit I didn't work on the farm much. I got out there on school holidays to wrap the strawberries back when we did it manually, and I still remember burning myself. But I do say with all sincerity, while I don't have the hands of a farmer, I've got the heart of a farmer, because I've spent my life watching my uncle, my cousins, my family struggle with some of the challenges in farming. And there's some lessons. My family, we wouldn't be here today without farming and without agriculture. I wouldn't be making this speech today without farming and without agriculture. And there's a couple of great lessons, well, there's many great lessons I learnt from my Uncle Sam. There's a couple in particular that stay with me when we're talking about Levies, and he was the president of the Victorian Strawberry Growers Association and president of the National Strawberry Growers Association for decades. And he told me when I got into this role, he goes, never forget, those levies, they're not government money, it's farmers' money. Never forget that it's farmers' money when you talk about those levies, and that's something I'll never forget. But I also remember Christmas Day, I think it was 2011, when his farm and his crop was destroyed by hail. The strawberries were wiped out. Our community was destroyed from strawberries from that hail. And he sat down and ate his Christmas lunch while my cousins were a little bit stressed, and he said, well, what are you going to do? That's farming. We can't control the weather. But that's why bills like this are so abhorrent, because farmers can't control the weather. They can't control if their crop gets destroyed by hail or if it gets destroyed by flooding or any other disaster. But we can control the inputs and the impost that we put on farmers. And this is putting an unacceptable impost on farmers. Now, we all know the importance of biosecurity for our country and for agriculture, and there was many lessons through the last few years, and biosecurity importance was one of those. But let's understand the ridiculousness of what this government is asking. It is asking farmers to pay money to incur a cost to support their competitors. This government is asking Australian farmers to pay more money at a time when their costs of growing their produce is as high as it has ever been, to bring more competition into the country and to bring their sales down. It just makes no sense at all. As one small example, I was talking to a strawberry farmer in my community, Deputy Speaker, about 2 weeks ago. Labour costs on his produce, 60% labour costs. That's before you think of anything else. And this government wants to add another charge to that. But to make it even more ridiculous, this levy is not going to be charged on profits. This levy is going to be charged on revenue. On revenue, not understanding the cost base, the profits or the loss that farmers go through. Now, in my community, there's close to 100 strawberry farms within Victoria. However, the majority of the farms, 75%, are located within the Yarra Valley. And I just want to add to the many other speakers who are representing and have given quotes from industry today, because it is clear this government has ignored industry. I'm going to read a few quotes from Berries Australia. They've described this as unfair and a poorly conceived levy. The so-called Biosecurity Protection Levy should be called out for what it is: a tax on farmers. Berries Australia Executive Director Rachel McKenzie said that, and I quote, "Berries Australia, along with more than 90 other industry associations, provided submissions vigorously opposing the levy and the proposed mechanism to base contributions on the existing levy system. Not a single submission supported the proposal, but the government is going ahead regardless." She continued by saying, "They are now basing the contributions on industry GVP, which disproportionately impacts horticulture, as our crops are high value but also high cost. Very rough initial figures put the contribution of strawberries and blueberries at the $300,000 a year mark, and the rubus industry at $150,000 per year." Continuing her quotes, "Taxing on turnover, not profit, is ridiculous. Once again, there was no consultation, just a knee-jerk reaction." It's clear that this government does not understand farming and agriculture. Wanting to add additional costs at a time when Australians can least afford it just shows how out of touch this Prime Minister and this Treasurer and this government is, how they make the wrong decisions for the Australian people. Because let's play out what's going to happen. At a time when farmers in my community, 60% of their cost is labour, their energy prices are going through the roof, their fuel prices are going through the roof. Buying punnets of strawberries, as an example, or berries, the plastic punnets, going through the roof. Every input is going up at a time when they are under pressure from Woolworths and Coles and other supermarkets to bring prices down in the shops. So a couple of things have to happen. A couple of things logically have to happen. To be sustainable and absorb this levy, the cost needs to be passed on to the consumer, and the consumer has to pay more. If the consumer's not going to pay more to absorb this cost, the farmer has to absorb it, which makes many of their crops and yields unprofitable, putting their livelihoods at risk. And it's an accumulation of hit after hit after hit to our agricultural community. And they need to be able to be profitable when it's a good yield, because when there's a bad yield or there's a significant weather event like hail, they have to have some buffer to survive. This is not packaged goods. This is not a set and forget. So this is the problem that we face. Our industry is under pressure. Our industry, we need to be honest, is ageing. In my community, many older farmers are retiring and their children are not taking over. And that's really sad, but the children are going, why would I get in when we're hitting hit after hit and the government are continuing to take us for granted? We need to find better ways. The fact that this government is wanting to tax farmers, not the risk creators, the importers, is outrageous. In no other country would this happen. It just again shows this government being out of touch. But like many of the government's bills, it also lacks detail. We don't know how the levy will be collected. We don't actually know who the producers will be. This is a standard formula for this government. We'll work it out after we've passed the bill, but that's not acceptable for our farmers, for our community. It is another example of the Albanese Labor government making life harder for the Australian people, making it harder for farmers, making it harder to put food on the table for those farmers, for the Australian community. And it is disappointing that this government is refusing to listen to industry, refusing to listen to industry. We have to sit in question time and hear the charade of this government talk about consultation. Well, they haven't consulted with industry. We've had many examples from many speakers on this side. And it is disappointing and it is a shame that this government continues to make bad decisions that are impacting the Australian people.